Hi, welcome to Secret Art of Business. And today I have Adrienne Gordon, who is the CEO of Price Space. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh, thanks so much for having me, Catherine. Really
I'm
appreciate it.
really, oh, go ahead.
No,
Just jumped right in because I want you to tell me about your business.
awesome. So I actually have two businesses. So Pricing Empowered is a management consulting firm that is focused just on pricing for B2B. And it's a boutique firm that's very high touch. So we have a couple large clients at a given time. It's very high tailored types of engagements. Price Space is our newer company. It is basically aimed for mid market. So it takes the same tools that we've been using for big companies for years, and we put it onto an online platform. So we have some technologies involved with Price Space, and then we have some on-demand, like hour a week kind of consulting available through Price Space.
Cool. Let's talk about who might be your ideal client for this. So, when you are looking for people to work with, who's in need?
So, I mean, pretty much every company needs help in pricing, right? And there's not a lot of people who do pricing for a living. This has been my entire career since 1999. So basically, there's different levels of offerings for different types of companies. So Price Space has some workshops that are accessible to small companies. Small companies can come and learn about the traditional standard strategies and tactics that any company can use in pricing. As far as the technology is concerned, the online platform and our program, we're really aiming for companies probably about 15 million, all the way up to really a $500 million in sales annually, because there's a different levels of tools for different types of complexity. And then Pricing Empowered, typically those are going to be private equity groups or public companies, so they're much larger clients.
So when you say you help clients with pricing, is it a matter of you are looking at their numbers, for example, their spreadsheets or financials, and you're like, you are just not charging enough? Is it like that? Is it that simple?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. So that is part of it. But we talk a lot about the numbers. There's a thing called pricing science. That is part of what we do, and we're pretty good at it. But at the end of the day, most individuals and companies, they tend to undervalue themselves. So a lot of times we're working with everything that needs to happen to get companies fearless to ask for what they're actually worth. So a lot of times that's helping them understand their own value where they maybe haven't even looked at it themselves. Sometimes it's helping resource pricing activities. So working with organizational change. Certainly, we do a lot of work in strategy. We do a lot of sales training. So it really runs the gamut. We say we are a full service, everything you need in pricing, we will do it.
Why do you think people undervalue themselves?
I think we all have social constructs, right? So, I use an example of being a young woman professional, and hearing some snickering in the background about the glass ceiling and feeling a little meek about it. And so, I built my own social constructs around, am I really worth it? And I think all of us have some story. And what ends up happening is actually when we put people together in organizations, like they all have their own stories, and then they start talking about it to each other, and then it actually exponentially grows. So I actually have this theory that companies tend to undervalue themselves in aggregate more than humans do on their own.
Oh,
And
that's
so we
interesting.
try to break that in our conversations.
Well, there seems to be sometimes this issue of where people always think I have to be the cheapest. And what would you say to that?
That's fixing a non-pricing problem with price. So if you are doing your business well, I say that we don't really think about our competitors, to be honest, because we do things in a very unique way, and we try to find customers that need our uniqueness. And so being the least expensive means that you're not doing anything unique, or you don't understand your value. It's one of those two things.
Now, looking on your LinkedIn, I'm seeing that you have an education in biomedical engineering and in marketing. So how did you get into this?
So no one wakes up one morning and says, "I'm going to be a pricing professional," right? It doesn't happen that way. So I started my life as a biomedical engineer and then went into engineering sales. And I immediately knew that, business was the path for me. But what ended up happening is I was working for a Fortune 500 company, and they had a consultant saying, "You got to do this strategic pricing thing." And this was in the 90s. And they said we probably need a product manager, which I was at the time, to help with this. And they looked across the bench, and here I am in my 20s, and I grew up on a computer. I knew how to program,
Hmm.
and all of the other product managers were much much older. And so they asked, "Would you do this thing called strategic pricing? It's heavy data, so it was big data before big data was a thing."
Hmm.
And so I got into it and then really became passionate about it because what people don't understand about pricing is done well, it literally hits every function in an organization. So some days it's an operations problem, some days it's a finance problem, some days it's a marketing problem. And so it's been fascinating because, it changes every day on what we work on.
That's really interesting. Now, I'm going to assume that when you were a kid, you knew to a certain degree that you wanted to get into engineering or marketing or things like that. But let's talk specifically. When you were a kid, what did you really love doing?
So from a non-professional standpoint, I was
Absolutely.
a
That's what we're
swimmer.
talking about.
Yeah, yeah, my thing was swimming. So
Oh, nice.
yeah, and even today, so I swam from the time I was 5. I took a couple years off in high school, but straight through high school, and then I played water polo for the guys team at
Oh,
BU
wow. Look at
at
you.
Boston University.
Nice.
So I was a fish, and yeah, it was many many hours every day of my life.
And you are still doing that. I kind of got that vibe that you still like to swim.
I love being in water. I could actually swim more distance than I could run right now for sure. It doesn't physically tax me, but yeah, I did in my adult life some triathlons for a while. Pandemic, I got a little lazy since then, but I love being in the water.
Oh, that's really interesting. What do you find most about being in the water that is enjoyable? Or do you just challenge yourself with it?
No, it becomes meditative for me. So it's the whole world goes away except for what's, me in the water, and yeah, it basically takes me into a totally different space.
And did like someone just throw you in the pool one day and you're like, "Oh no, this is where I belong," or did you really like, "I want to learn how to swim," or your parents thought you should learn how to swim, and then it just kind of went from there?
Yeah, actually they moved from the state of Washington to Philadelphia when I was 4 and bought a house that bumped up against a country club, and there was actually a pool of the country club in my backyard. And so, first day we moved in, I remember I was 4 years old and my dad brought me over to the pool, and at that point they said, "Okay, she's 4, she probably needs swim lessons because there's a pool in the backyard." And so, I took my swim lessons and that was it. And by the time I was 5, I was on the swim team. By the time I was 7, I was doing US swimming.
Very
It
cool.
just kept
Very,
going.
very cool. And is there anything else that you do to kind of unplug from your work? Because I mean, you're talking about heavy data, lots of numbers. So what is it that you do to really kind of step away and get more right brain focused?
From a creative standpoint, so
Hmm.
I do enjoy hikes. I spend a lot of time in green areas, so
Hmm.
that really helps me get in creative space. I try to journal. I do meditate. I'm also a certified hypnotist, believe it or not.
What?
So I am. So I do that really just for friends and family, but that actually helps me get in creative space when I'm hypnotizing other people, believe it or not.
Why would you hypnotize someone?
Um, so I believe in the power of
I love
hypnotism and
this idea,
suggestion.
but I'm like, how does this come up? Like, is it like just a parlor trick, fun game
No,
thing, or do people come to you for like, I gotta stop smoking or something?
yeah. So it's typically things that people want to break through. So sometimes it's they want confidence, they want to be able to do public speaking. We do a lot of pain. I do a lot of pain management. So somebody who's got chronic pain,
Oh
or they're battling
goodness.
cancer, grieving. So I'll work with people who are grieving that just need a little more lightness. Yeah. So it's
Is
just
that just
a
like a
gift.
side hustle or is that a business too?
It could be actually. I do own a business that called Free Mind. That is totally a side project, but I don't really sell anything through it. Mostly that's just because it's rewarding for me.
That's so interesting. How did you get involved with that?
So I've been doing self hypnosis for a couple decades, and I just see the power of it. And so it was my pandemic skill. So suddenly I was, going from traveling all the time for pricing consulting to nothing. I had a lot more time, and so I decided I was going to get myself certified. So I went through all of the training, and yeah.
That is so freaking fantastic. Um, I don't even know how to even follow up with that. I've totally lost my place on that. But so I'm going to just ask you, what do you have still in the future that you would like to accomplish with your business or businesses?
So PriceSpace was really founded to just have a paradigm shift in having access to pricing consultants because small businesses typically have not. There's again not a lot of people who have focused on pricing strategy as a career, and so what I find is when companies really do things well and we can teach them all of the different ways to look at their own value, over time they end up actually self-actualizing. And I know that
Hmm.
sounds kind
Hmm.
of crazy, but what ends up happening is we set up processes and systems with them where we say, okay, we believe there's value here, and let's go test it. And they'll test it, and either they'll find that they had value they didn't know, which elevates their confidence, or they find out they didn't, and they have two choices. They either then lower their prices, which we recommend you don't, or they innovate. And so there's an evolution that happens with it. And so my goal is literally to touch hundreds of companies in the next 5 years, with that message that if you do this right, you will self actualize as a company. Your culture will change. People will be in flow. They'll be happy. They will become more creative. It's a very cool thing to watch.
I firmly believe in everything that you say there. And one of the things that I do when I have the opportunity to mentor other business owners, it is basically asking them it is it that makes your company special, because that's where the dollars are. Because anybody can, do plumbing, for example, if they go to school and they learn how to do it. But what makes your business the one to call? And it could be based on reliability. It could be based on, you work with small groups, large groups, but you have to have some sort of specialization that makes it easier for your customer to not only relate to, but to make their pain go away in a much more, I guess, relatable way.
Yeah, I mean, one of the common questions I ask companies is if I hear these words, we're just a commodity. I'll say, okay, what'd you do
Hmm.
in sales last year? So they'll say, I did 7 million in sales last year, and I have $7 million of proof that you're not.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, so it's really interesting
Somebody
because people
needs
just
you.
don't think about it that way.
Yeah, a lot of people need you for something. So, what is it that keeps them coming? And what made them believe in you in the beginning? And why do they keep coming back?
Um, so our clients, we tend to end up having pretty long-term engagements. And almost always pricing empowered was word of mouth, right? So we didn't do a lot of marketing. In fact, marketing is kind of new for me, even though I have a degree in marketing. um, but yeah, it's been mostly word of mouth where we've worked with executive team that saw results. So we tend to drive significant profits and significant win rates actually with our clients. And then we end up, in long-term engagements, but ultimately our goal is to leave 100% of our clients self-sufficient. So we are not the typical consultants that are constantly going to be selling. We have a goal that when we walk away from a client that they will take it and run with the processes and for the rest of the time the client exists, right? So
Cool. So then the length of the relationship is kind of just based on the circumstances of the company. It's not necessarily a solid for like in 6 months we will be done. It's more of a, get to know the customer and then kind of figure out what that path is.
yeah, so again, if we look at it as this path to self-actualization, the typical time frame for most companies could be like 4 years to really get there. So it's not
Okay.
atypical for us to be around for 2, 3 years of that ramp to get them going. And in price space, it'll be interesting to see how that evolves with our clients, since it's a fairly new company and we're trying to do the same with smaller companies. To see, can we get them to go faster because we've built in standardized work, right? And we've built in the systems that they can hopefully take and run with. We'll see.
That is so awesome. And everything that you do, I absolutely love, because I think pricing is just, like I said, it's the one thing that people, I think, have maybe their biggest struggle with, in that, am I pricing this right? Am I too cheap? Am I too expensive? Things like that. And then not only just to basically tell them, you're either too high or too low, or typically it's too low, but how to course correct that a bit. So not only is that super cool, but I love that you're a swimmer, because I'm a terrible swimmer. And I don't think I could ever do like a triathlon or things like that. Plus, you hypnotize people. So, I mean, that's three things that I'm super jealous about. With you.
They're all teachable. So if you ever want to hang out, I can teach you pricing, hypnosis, and how to swim.
I love it. I love it. Thank you so much. It has been so great because we have talked on many occasions, and we have not ever gotten this deep. It's always been kind of a high level conversation as about business, and but to know a little more about you is just so awesome, and I really appreciate your time, and I love what you're doing. And if anything, people should contact you. I will have all your information in the notes. If people have questions or would like to ask you about their own pricing, so they will have a way to get in touch with you. So thank
Thank
you
you.
so much for doing this.
I really appreciate the invite. It was great. It was a lot of fun.